Hello friends and fellow gamers, and welcome back to another 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons video. Today we're going to take another look into Xanathar's Guide to Everything, continuing our delving into this collection of a wide variety of different materials. Today we're going to take a look at 10 of my favorite spells from Xanathar's Guide, 10 spells that I don't think are really discovered anywhere else. We do have a lot of spells in the book from other sources like the Elemental Evil Player's Companion, but these 10 I think are really interesting, and as far as I understand are new anywhere outside of Unearthed Arcana, some of them not even in Unearthed Arcana to my knowledge. So let's dive in, beginning with our cantrips, and there are two that I think really stood out, the first one being Infestation. This is a conjuration cantrip, 1 action, 30-foot range, requires a living flea if you do utilize material components, and I think thematically this is really neat. 1, it's a constitution save, so that's helpful, and 2, you do some poison damage. Unfortunately, those two are probably the most commonly strong among most monsters, so that's not great, but the special effect that it offers is really neat. So if it fails its constitution save, it takes the poison damage and moves 5 feet in a random direction if it can move there, and its speed is at least 5 feet. You roll a d4 and then itching and scratching and feeling all completely uncomfortable as this little infestation of mites, fleas, and other parasites, this kind of cloud is surrounding them, going up and down. I kind of picture a little bit from The Mummy, where the little beetle crawls up his arms, something like that. And that causes them to jitter and shake, taking damage, but also just moving, which can be really a dynamic and interesting way to kind of just have a greater effect on the battlefield. It's not a lot, but for a cantrip, I think it's a really neat effect. The second cantrip is Toll the Dead. This is necromancy, has a 60-foot range, no material components. And this reminds me very much, as you can tell by the thematic elements, of an Edgar Allan Poe kind of poem, The Bells, Bells, Bells. And let's read the description. You point at one creature you can see within range, and the sound of a dolorous bell fills the air around it for a moment. The target has to make a wisdom save, so a weaker save for most monsters, or it takes 1d8 necrotic damage. If it is missing any of its hit points, it takes a d12. And this damage, of course, increases as you level up. The thematic tolling of the bells, I think it's a really neat thing, and gives us another necromancy cantrip besides the chilling hand, which is thematically also pretty neat, but I like this one a lot. On a first level, we get into a more meaty spell, but a very interesting one very roleplay sort of flavorful, and this is Ceremony. It's a first level abjuration spell, a ritual spell, and since its casting time's an hour, you're rarely going to be using your spell slot for this. It requires 25 gold worth of materials, and then after the hour is done, one of a number of effects comes into play. So reading the description, you perform a special religious ceremony that's infused with magic. When you cast the spell, choose one of the following rites, the target of which must be within 10 feet of you throughout the casting. So they're sitting there, whoever it is you're going to do this on, over an hour, you're praying over them, you're calling upon divine favors, you're having a ceremony exactly as it says. And this is for clerics and paladins, by the way. And one of 6 effects comes over. First, Atonement, which allows them to restore alignment. Bless Water, you can create your own holy water. Coming of Age, a humanoid who's about to become an adult, who's a young adult going through their tribal ceremony or just the rites of becoming an adult. And they get bonuses for the whole next day. It's their adult day, and they get a lot of perks for that. Dedication consecrates someone who wishes to become dedicated to your god's service, your god's call, and then for the next day, whenever they make a saving throw, it's a d4 boosted. Now, a creature can only benefit from this once, so you're not having the same ceremony day after day. The next ability is Funeral Rite, which means that for the next 7 days, the target cannot become undead by any means other than a wish spell. And then lastly, Wedding. You touch adult humanoids willing to be bonded together in marriage. For the next 7 days, each target gains +2 AC while they're within 30 feet of each other. You can only benefit from this rite, again, if you are widowed. So, Wizards of the Coast promoting monogamy in their spells, right? You can't have multiple wives and then each of them getting this benefit and all that sort of thing. Well, I guess you could probably work around that if you really wanted to play around with that. But I think just this kind of magic, the weaving of everyday life with magic. It makes so much sense in a world with magic, with gods actively present with their servants, roaming about, doing things, spreading their word. Would you not have this sort of thing? It'd be fairly common. Your village cleric would be performing one of these ceremonies at least once a week. And then the idea of, we've saved up enough gold to get the silver that we need for this ceremony. Here you go, Father. Here you go, Cleric. I think it's just a really, really cool spell. Also at first level is Chaos Bolt. First level evocation, 120-foot range. And this one's neat because it has an exploding sort of effect. You hurl an undulating, warbling mass of chaotic energy at one creature in range. Ranged spell attack. On a hit, the target takes 2d8 plus 1d6 damage. And then you pick one of those d8s that you rolled, and that determines the damage type of the whole spell. So you can see here, there's 8 damage types. The neat thing, however, so your damage is randomized, which is sometimes good and sometimes not. You do have a choice of, you're going to roll 2d8s. You pick whichever one is most favorable for the moment. However, a really neat effect is if you roll the same number on both d8s, it leaps to a different creature of your choice within 30 feet. You make a new attack roll, you do the damage again. If it gets doubles again, you can bounce it around. A creature can only be targeted once. But the idea of you're not just excited about the damage total of whatever your damage roll is, but the numbers on there, you'd even be fine with snake eyes on your d8s because then you can bounce it off to someone else. And it would be a really neat kind of engaging dynamic spell to cast, and rather effective, I think, and very fitting for some specific character types. Particularly, I see wild magic mages as this being really reflective of their kind of loose control of magic. Next spell into second level is Healing Spirit. It is a bonus action to cast, a 60-foot range, and a concentration effect up to a minute. Let's read. You call forth a nature spirit to soothe the wounded, and the intangible spirit appears in a place that is a 5-foot cube you can see, up to the 60-foot range. The spirit looks like a transparent beast or fae, whatever you want to describe it as. Until the spell ends, whenever you or a creature you can see moves into the spirit space for the first time on a turn, or starts its turn there, you can cause the spirit to restore d6 hit points to that creature, no action required. And the spirit can heal constructs or undead, and then as a bonus action on your next turn, subsequent turns, you can move it up to 30 feet. This to me is a really cool spell that allows for healing. One, being a bonus action is very, very important. It frees you up to use your action for other things. And then you position it and kind of players will move through it. You kind of make it so that it's advantageous to them, or they're going to retrace their movement in order to gain the greatest effect of this. It means that battlefield positioning, which is something that is kind of not a huge deal in 5e, but is something that particularly tactical-minded players are interested in. And I just think that the effect is rather neat to have this kind of wellspring of healing energy on the battlefield. It moves. You don't have to just sit around and heal. People can go to the healing source. I think that's really cool. Next, on to third level is Life Transference, a third level necromancy spell, 30-foot range. It's an action. You sacrifice some of your health to mend another creature's injuries. You take 48 necrotic damage, and one creature of your choice that you can see gains a number of hit points equal to twice the damage you take. And then it increases by d8s per spell level above that. This is basically giving I would say most specifically, your Necromancer Wizard, who has the Grim Harvest ability, so their spells deal damage, they get healed. They can use Life Transference to basically be a Necromancer healer, to at least have some healing there, though it does open up a variety of other avenues. Your Wizard, who is maybe not a Necromancer, just has this in their back pocket. Maybe they're an Abjuration Wizard who's got that temporary hit point bubble, so that even though their health is going down, they still have that defense